All right, we are live on YouTube, ladies and gents. I'm super happy, Danny. I'm sorry that you are the 13th episode. I'm not superstitious, so this is going to be awesome. So I'm
Oh,
not worried about it.
that's one of my lucky numbers. So
There
I
we
didn't even know that. Yeah.
go. So we're on episode 13. My guest today is Danny Mayer. You may have seen him on the road with a plethora of people. We're going to get into all that stuff, but most recently, Star Kitchen, Eric Krasno's band, Alan Evans, all that stuff. We'll get into all that throughout this conversation. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing really good. It's, obviously an insane time in the world. So all that aside, I'm hanging in there. It's crazy to not be able to gig. We were just talking about that. It's the kind of the one thing I would say is not great right now for me personally in my little world,
Right. Are you in PA now, right? Didn't you
Yeah, exactly. I'm outside of Philadelphia, like Philadelphia suburbs. So
Cool. You're right up the road from me, man. I mean, that's like Philly's like an hour and a half from me.
You're in Baltimore?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean,
When this is over.
I was just gonna say exactly when it's safe to do so, we gotta have a hang for sure.
Yeah, man. So
sure.
obviously everything came to a screeching halt for you in March, probably, right?
Yes.
So currently, I would say is Star Kitchen the current product that you like or project that you're like full on board with right now? Like what's going on there?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's been the most recent kind of like touring band that I played in, and it was going it was like kind of starting to take off before it couldn't, and but the nature, it is a side project. Mark is in the Disco Biscuits, which is like a huge band, and um so the nature of a side project is a lot of times it takes the back seat to the main project, which is, that getting into it, and it's all totally cool and understandable. But in times kind of like this when things are starting to pop up again, or there's like these drive-in shows that we could do, if anyone's going to do them, it's going to be the Disco Biscuits. It's not going to be Star Kitchen, you know what I mean? A few
Right.
weekends that he has available or whatever. So that's been kind of like I would say the only real, like, what do you even call it, like the bottleneck, you know what I mean, is just kind of like um can't do as much as we all want to do, like we're all like super into it, but obviously a band like that is gonna be the priority, which is again totally understandable.
Yeah.
Before, besides that, it's a fucking hell of a band. It's we're doing weird things. we're definitely exploring the ethers.
I've seen clips. It sounds awesome, man. Can you, for
Oh,
people that don't know, can you talk a little bit about the music? Just like, you don't have to describe what do you guys sound like, but like,
yeah, of course.
I mean, obviously, you're staying in that jam circuit.
Right. It's an interesting band for me personally, just because like everyone in the band is coming from very different places musically. Like before, I haven't known Mark for too long. Mark Brownstein is the bass player for the Disco Biscuits, who started Star Kitchen with me, and he had never really played like funk before. He's always been kind of like in the electronic kind of, I think he calls it like jamtronica. You know what I mean? It's like fast, up tempo, four on the floor type stuff, and all to a computer. You know what I mean? Playing like tracks and click tracks, and so the drummer is always just locked into this thing. And there's a lot. I think for him, there's a lot less freedom and flow. You know what I mean? It's like they do these crazy, beautiful jams, and it gets amazing. But I think he wanted to. I think I remember what I remember him saying is, I want to have a band that can do late nights at Jazz Fest. You know what I mean? And he wanted to like explore more like funk based thing. And so we got together, we started playing along with like Aretha Franklin records and like trying to do more like traditional soul funk kind of stuff. And this was before we even were like, we're starting a band. It was like, you want to get together and jam? We live 5 minutes from each other. So that's kind of how it started. Then Rob Marsha, the keyboard player, lived like when we first started the band, he just happened to move like 20 minutes down the road. And I had played with him sitting in with Jen Hartswick's band.
Mm.
And he just had this like, guitar and keys have this funny rub sometimes. You know what I mean? Like if the keyboard player is too busy, it eats up the guitar. If the guitar player is too busy, it eats up some of the keys. They're existing in that same frequency range. If you're playing with an organ player, they're taking up every frequency range possible. You know what I mean?
And
So
all the
it's
overtones.
exactly. So it's a bit of like a fight there, not necessarily in a negative way. You know what I mean? But like, um, so Rob just had this like spacious feel. Like it was like I remember talking to Mark about it and being like, man, it's like playing with him was like he just gave you this like nice pillow to rest your head on. You know what I mean? Like
That's awesome.
this foundational pad of like color to just launch from, and he's got ears like, elephant ears. Guys hears everything from my anyway. So I was like, let's get him in the band. Then we ended up auditioning a bunch of different drummers. And when Marlon Lewis on the drums, man, he literally we played with him for 5 minutes, and I think we just stopped in the middle of the jam. And Rob, who like doesn't say much at all, ever, you know what I mean? He's a real quiet dude. Literally was the first one to be like, hey man, if you want to do this, you're hired. You know what I mean? Like this is like the best it's been, and so, and Marlon's coming from like a church background, but he plays with hip hop artists and like the R&B scene. He's got like, played with Lauryn Hill and
Oh,
Brian
wow.
McKnight for years and like these heavy duty gigs, and somehow Mark's electronica background, Marlon's R&B church hip hop gospel thing, my kind of like bluesy weird jammy thing, and Rob's just colorful pads just like created this vibe. And it's in the vein of a lot of other bands who are like in the funk jam band scene, but it's totally different just
Mhm.
because I think we're all this amalgam of these different worlds. And so I don't really know what it sounds like. To me, it sounds like me and Mark and Rob
Mhm.
and Marlon, you know what I mean? Coming together and having a nice conversation. And sometimes people are talking over each other, and sometimes everyone's kind of lined up and giving each other nice space. But it's a band. It's just like a fucking wild band. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah. I mean, every single clip that I've seen, I've been like the whole time. So I mean, it
Right.
grooves, so people that are like may not be hip to it. It's definitely like a groovy band, for
Right.
sure.
That's Marlon. That's
Yeah.
Marlon.
You
He's
can tell.
responsible. Yeah. He's
Yeah.
responsible for that for sure.
What do you do, like, just to go back to the whole idea of like frequencies of battling keyboard players and stuff? Because
Yeah.
for the bulk of the career since I've known you since like 2011 or whenever we started talking, because we have a
Hmm.
mutual friend in Justin Kruger, which you're like, hey, this cat's moving to Baltimore. You should talk to him. Who he's now in
Right.
my
Right.
band. He's like in my band now. So thank you for that. But
Yes, of course.
but
It's awesome.
yeah, but like the whole thing with you playing with keyboards, like you've been in a lot of organ trios and like
It's like all I've done. Yeah.
yeah. So like what do you do to circumvent that issue with guitar? Like how do you craft your sound? Like what do you do?
Well, I didn't really know what the hell I was doing for a really long time. And it kind of was like, I think when it was Alan Evans trio, when I finally got to the point where I was like playing with one of my heroes, and it was like Alan Evans, and I cared so much about what he thought and what his experience was on stage, and I wanted to. He would honestly, he would just be like, he- you know, we played really small rooms a lot of times. His cymbal was literally this close to my ear. Most nights I could reach out, we could high five on every stage we ever played pretty much. And I remember him just leaning into me in the beginning and being like, yo, man, turn that shit up. Like, turn up. Come on. You're the fucking guitar player.
Right.
Like, let's do this. So I think at first, at least in that band, it was like, I battled it with volume. You know what I mean? Like it was just like I just turned up as loud as the keyboard player was, and then we started everywhere we went, after about a year of that, it was like, this is the loudest band on the face of the planet. Can you guys please turn down? You know, you're playing a bar restaurant like you're playing fucking Wembley Stadium. Like, you know what I mean? This is really so. Anyways, I think then over time that kind of evolved into actually like verbal communication sometimes of like, hey man, I feel when I'm soloing, it feels real muddy when this is happening, or, you know, being able to actually like give some sort of direction or guidance, or at least express my feelings about something verbally has proven to be incredibly helpful, you know? And
Mhm.
part of what I love about Rob Marsher is I never had to do that with him. It was
Yeah.
just like this immediate, like he understands kind of like what that is. He's out of everyone's way and is
Mhm.
just kind of supporting, you know, rather than being like an active, like strong, upfront keyboard. He does when he solos, but you know, when he's being supportive, it actually feels really supportive, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I think it's about finding the right people. I think it's also about communication. But in terms of like, if we want to get nerdy,
Do
like,
it.
yeah, like EQing certain low frequencies at like, I really like having a fat sound, you know, like
Mhm.
I really like just that when you hit that open E, you fucking feel it in your chest and you feel it in your feet on the ground. You know what I mean? It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
you fucking feel that. When you're playing with an organ player, or a keyboard player, or even a bass player, like I've found that I love that sound when I'm playing by myself, but a lot of it gets lost in the mix on stage.
Mhm.
So I've started kind of like rolling back some of the low end. For a while, I was getting like almost a little too trebly. So it's almost like about negative EQing instead of boosting. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Mhm. Yeah, no, totally. I
Right.
mean, all those, like, mid frequencies that we kind of live in as guitarists, because 'cause I'm playing with
Hmm.
a keyboard player now, and that's one thing I'm super conscious of if he's blowing over whatever we're playing, because I wanna get better at comping. Like,
Right.
I've been in so many bands where I've been the one dude who's the guy that's can solo and be out and improvise, besides the bass player, but, like, as a
Yeah.
melodic instrument. But
Right. Right. Right.
being able to even to comp with a keyboard player, if they're playing with a B3 patch or like a Rhodes or Whirly or something like that,
Hmm.
it's only, I feel like, and maybe you can identify this with this too, because you're like, I didn't know what I was doing at first, because like I didn't either. Like
Right.
I feel like it's like maturity of understanding where our different instruments sit frequency wise on stage.
Right.
And that's a
Totally.
tough thing. And a lot of younger players don't get that. And then when they get on stage, it's like a like, and then
Right.
everyone's like, you guys are killing, but like, I can't pick out who's doing what sometimes, you know?
Totally.
So, so when you comp, like if you're talking about, tailoring the frequencies of your instrument, like when you're comping, are you finding that you're leaning more? Because are you still playing that Mulan? You're playing mostly Strat instruments now, right?
Yeah, and that was kind of another big shift when I joined Al's band. It was like, oh, the Strat just fits in that space so much better than like something with humbuckers that takes up a lot more space. You know what I mean? Um, but I got this. Oh, it's downstairs. But I got this custom shop Fender Strat. But I was playing Mulans for years, and then I found this thing, and I was like, oh, you know, this is, ugh, I need it. I like, it's the first instrument I've actually like obsessed over, you know, had dreams about for like a month. You know, it was like, okay, I haven't had that since I was 15 years old and wanted this like Les Paul, you know, I saw in a
Yeah.
guitar shop or something. And it just, it's my baby. Like, I
What
don't, I
what is it? I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen any pictures of it yet. What is it?
really, it's a black, it's like Blackie. It's like the 50s style. It's new, but it's like super relict and road worn, which I was not necessarily into. I'd rather just do that myself, you know what I mean? But
Mhm.
this was a unique circumstance. You know who Justin Hendricks is? He's this
Mm-mm.
amazing guitar player out of Albany. And I was in this band with him called Bo Sasser's Escape Plan. It was
Oh,
like,
yeah, 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 I remember that.
yeah, he was the other guitar. Oh, but you saw us with Craig from Turquoise, who would fill in for Justin sometimes or
Oh,
fill
okay,
in for
okay.
me sometimes. So Justin is this guitar player. He works in this music shop in Albany. Star Kitchen went through Albany. I'll try to keep this quick. Went through Albany. He hit me up like, hey man, I work for this music shop. Pick out one of these strats. I want to take a couple pictures and a video of you just playing it and sound check for the online, for social media, basically for the music store. Mm-hmm. So of course I went to like the hippiest kind of like dirty looking one. It's black, white pick guard, but it's got pink paisley under the black. So it was like this super hippie kind of tripped out looking guitar. Yeah. The neck just looks like, it's been played for 100 years and all the finish is shaved off of the back of the neck, which I just love so much. And so I was like, I'll take that one. He's like, wow, you got great taste. This is the most expensive one. And so he brought it to sound check and I got to play it like with Star Kitchen through my pedals, through my amp. And I fucking lost my shit. I was like, this is a Stratocaster. You know what I'm saying? Like, but like a 50s one, like a thicker, a little bit like fatter sounding Strat. Just had this thing. And especially those like out of phase in between, 2 and 4 position, like just had that spanky thing that the Mulan just didn't really have, which I didn't know. I didn't know I wasn't happy with my Mulan until I played this thing. And it's not that I wasn't happy with it. It was just that this fucking blew my mind. You know what I mean? It was like, so anyways, I started playing the Mulan at the show and the whole time I was like, what's wrong with my sound? I just couldn't get back to that thing I was hearing. So long story short, I ended up trading a bunch of gear and procuring this amazing custom shop. It's like a 2019 custom shop. I think it's a 57 reissue kind of thing, but relict and looks like it's been dropped down several flights of stairs. And,
That's so great. I feel like, and I swear to you, I feel like sometimes this is so cheesy, but like it's so true. The guitars choose you.
Right. Yeah.
And it's weird like that. I had just sold a PRS one time. So I had like $2,500 in my pocket and I was in LA. Mm-hmm. And
dangerous.
I know. And I went to all these different stores and I ended up finally we went to Guitar Center in Hollywood. And right across the street there's that Mesa Boogie shop.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the whole reason I play Sirs now. Because I walked in there and I was like, oh, I've heard of Sir and I've heard of Nash and I've heard of all these, companies making T and S style guitars. And I picked it up and I swear to God, dude, it felt like somebody like creeped in my bedroom and measured my hand while I was sleeping. You know what I mean? It's so weird. But that's how I feel like every Sir that I pick up, it just feels like it's made for me. Wow. So I feel like that's the way it is, man. It's like they just sometimes the instrument will choose you. You can't
I didn't need a new guitar. I wasn't looking for one. You know what I mean? It was like, it's Justin's fault. It's Justin's fault. And he's the best dude. And the shop ended up, I did some like videos for them or something. They ended up like working a great deal. And I ended up trading them a shit ton of gear that I don't really use ever anymore. So it ended up being awesome. It was like, I think I ended up actually paying like $500 cash for it.
Oh my God.
Trading like a lot of stuff, but couple guitars, couple amps, a bunch of pedals. Yeah. You know what I mean? I like cleaned out the closet.
Yeah. But that's fine though. I feel like that's what's cool about what's going on right now too, is like it makes you aware of like, what do I actually use? What do I actually need? You know what I mean? Like
absolutely.
And we all, I guess we all go through phases though. We're like, ooh, there's a new overdrive pedal that everybody's talking about. And
I do that all the time.
Yeah. Speaking of that, have you played that Cornerstone Gladio?
No.
Bro.
Do I need to? Oh God.
I will tell you, it is one of the best Dumble sounding overdrive. It's like Robin Ford in a box.
Wow, man.
It's so good. I got it. And I sold 3 pedals. That next week, I sold 3 pedals. So like, I don't need any of these because it's a dual channel. So everyone talks about, Jesse Davey has all the amazing stuff with Kingtone, and I have his Duelist, which is a dual drive, and so is this Cornerstone Gladio. And between the two of them, they're totally different. One is more of that SRV thing that Jesse does, and then Emilio's cornerstone, Gladio is more of that Robin Ford kind of, Dumble thing.
Yeah.
But I think you would like it. I think you probably get a lot of mileage out of it. So
Man, I definitely got to check it out.
yeah.
I've been like, I've had a King of Tone on my board for, dude, I think it's been like 15 fucking years. Like,
Same one, like the same, no problems. No
I think I sent it back to him once and he hooked it up and sent it back to me. Like, there's like a chip in there that dies eventually or something. And I noticed it was like losing a little bit of bite or like life for, it like was missing something on a few gigs. And I hit him up like, hey, I'm kind of noticing it doesn't have that magic thing when I step on it anymore. And he's like, oh yeah, you've had it for 7 years or something like that. And played 750 shows with it. It's gonna, you know what I mean? And it was one of those things too, where it was like the left side, the kind of clean boost that you can dial a bunch of gain into. I generally like left that on all the time. So it was like in use, like constantly, and I think I sent it back to him, or maybe no, I was like he's in Connecticut. And I was traveling from Northampton, Massachusetts down to Philadelphia. And I end up driving like right by the shop and just hitting him up, being like, hey man, I'm in your town. Do you think we can swap these things? Come on in. So I went in there and he just did it right there and put new switches on it too. And that's really it. That was it.
Mike seems like he's an awesome dude. He seems like he's just like he loves what he does and he loves helping musicians. At least that's the vibe I get from what I've heard.
That's the vibe. Yeah, he's a great dude.
Yeah,
great dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let me jump back. So we jumped into the nerdy stuff right away, and I want to get back to nerdy stuff, but no, it's my fault too. But so on this show, I always ask all the guests, like, do you have a moment that it was like music was it? Like where you remember a moment where you're like, I want to, regardless if it was like, I want to pick up piano, I want to play the drums, I want to play guitar.
Yeah.
Do you have a moment that you like specifically remember?
I have several. Let me grab some water real quick.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, do it, man.
Sorry.
That's
so, okay. Dude, I mean, the first one as far back as I can remember, and like my parents and grandparents who aren't with us anymore, but everyone in my family, anyone who knows me when I was 4 years old will attest to this. Fucking Phil Collins, Coming in the Air Tonight, dude. Like, I'm straight up. I remember being a little kid, like hearing that on the radio and literally being like, this is it. I want to do whatever that drum fill is. And when that groove comes in, I want to be a part of that. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't even know what the hell it was, and but I knew. And at that point, I remember my parents got me this little plastic, like a kid drum set that was like, I think it was like plastic, but I beat the shit out of that thing, man. And it was like, I was just so into it. I just was so into it. And then, obviously I was a little kid, time passed. And then like, I was in high school. I didn't really start playing guitar until I was like a freshman in high school, or like 8th grade. I remember it was like 8th grade and I was getting into like I was kind of a hippie, you know what I mean? I was getting into the Grateful Dead and Pink Floyd and the Beatles and all like 60s music and really kind of exploring that decade,
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember hearing Hendrix, and I remember hearing like specific Grateful Dead shows that had this particular like magic-y kind of vibe. And and I remember just thinking again, like, not necessarily I want to do that. It was just like, I want to be a part of that. Like whatever that like energy is, because it's not just music. There's like something else going on there with those guys. Like,
really is, man.
You know what I mean? And it was like, that was more what blew my mind than like the actual playing itself. It was just this thing I knew I wanted to be a part of. And then, I took a few lessons. I taught myself the rest. I used to come home from school and put on bootlegs and just play along with just press play on the tape and I had no idea what I was doing and would just find the key and play along with all these Grateful Dead jams and smoke a bunch of weed and trip out. And like, that's literally how I learned how to play guitar. And probably the only time in my career in my life where I was playing like hours and hours a day. I was
Yeah.
like, the bug really bit, and I was into it then. So those were like the few moments, that eighth grade, ninth grade, high school, kind of hearing what that was all about. And that Phil Collins thing, man, like that planted the seed for sure. Like
Did you
100%.
did anybody feed you how did you find the Dead? Like how did you come to find that music? Because I have an older sibling. I have two older siblings who my sister's 8 years older than me. My brother's 4 years older than me. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a pretty big gap, you know. But my sister was really big into the Dead, and then my brother was. So like my memories of the Dead, you know, a lot of the time, like it's funny sometimes when I listen to the Dead, I smell a marble red being lit because I used to get my brother's car and he would put on a tape. He would put a tape in and he would light his
Mm-hmm.
marble red. And I smell that tobacco lighting. And like, it's weird, man. It's like, there is something about the Dead
Mm-hmm.
that it like, once it gets in you, it's never going to get out.
Right. And I mean, I went through a heavy, heavy phase. I could tell you in a split second what year, what show. Like, I could literally hear anything and be like, oh, that's from this show and that's from that. And this is this year. And this got to be a 77 show because there's no, you know what I mean? I was such a like nerd about it. And then when I really got like later into high school, I started getting way into jazz. And I was like, oh, the Dead suck. You know what I mean? I like
Yeah.
went total like opposite direction and stayed there for a really long time until really kind of recently when I got to actually play with Phil Lesh and was like learning Grateful Dead songs, and like I got to do that whole thing, and it really like sparked the whole thing. I was like, oh my god, I'm like 14 in heaven right now. You know what I mean? Like,
Dude, I freaked out when I saw you were doing that on your behalf. How did that come
cool.
about?
I mean, it's Kraz. That was Kraz connection. It was
Yeah.
Kraz band playing 2 nights at Terrapin Crossroads, and Phil, I guess if he likes the band who's coming through, we'll just sit in, you know. And so we played like 2 nights, and he played the first set with us both nights.
Mm.
I'll tell you what, those second sets though, I mean, it was like amazing to play with Phil, but like the energy that we all had after playing with him and then getting to play another set, it was like some of the best shows I think I've ever been a part of in my life. Just that like special vibe kind of lingering, but we weren't having to play Dead songs. We were playing like Kraz tunes and rocking. You know what I mean? It was like
Yeah.
it was some special stuff for sure.
You can tell, I feel like anytime you see Phil playing with like some young bucks, you can tell that lights his fire playing with younger musicians who are like
Yeah.
pushing the envelope on him too. Because
Mm-hmm.
do you remember like when the whole like when Dead and Company first started playing and you know, when Mayer first started playing with them
Mm-hmm.
and how bad the tempos were that first
Yeah.
tour? Oh my
Yes.
god. I was like, dude, like
Yeah. Full
this is
sleepy time.
brutal. Oh my
Yeah.
god. Like I was like,
Yeah.
I bet you John's like, come on, we gotta push it, man. Like it's dragging too
Mm-hmm.
much. So I you can see it. You can see it with Bobby too now, like on those Dead and Company gigs, that there's like a new life. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
you can tell from what Bobby's doing. And I think he said this in an interview, but he was like, my hope is that when I leave this earth, that this music lives on, and whether it lives on with this band, if it's Oteil and John and whoever else playing together, that this music will continue to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, as far as like playing all that music with Phil, did you find anything like complicated? Like when because some of those tunes people don't realize
Dude,
some of it's pretty complicated.
exactly. Like I've heard them enough to know, like if I didn't know the songs in my head, I would have been so fucked. You know what I'm saying? Like my whole career has been based on one chord jams for fucking 5 hours. You know what I mean? Like, and then we're there playing. Dude, there's changes, like crazy changes, and they're very like they're not ambiguous changes. They're not. It's D major to C. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
you can't play like out at all. Like
right.
in the tunes, the jams are the jams, obviously, but um, they were hard, man. They were hard tunes, but luckily, Kraz is like the most gracious dude, and he knows all those songs so well and has played them with all the guys, you know, the original dudes, and has played them a lot. And so he was teaching me certain things, and oh, they don't do it like they did in 72. Phil's gonna want to do it like he did in, you know, 94. They add this weird tag at the end, or there's an extra chorus on this. Dude, and that's the stuff like you don't realize. It's like there's just one extra bar at the end of the verse on this thing for just to grab that extra lyric, or
Mm-hmm.
but it just sounds like a Grateful Dead song. You don't even think twice about it, and then you're learning them. You're like, and then the other challenging thing was like, I remember Phil, we were sound checking and running the songs, and Phil said it was like a walk down thing. And Phil was like, oh, instead of the G, play an E minor there. And I kind of was like, G instead of E minor, where it just, and he would kind of kept doing that. Like, oh, instead of the B minor, play a this, or instead of this, play a that. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I was like, I spent so much time learning these songs just like this. Please don't make me change it. You know what I mean? It was like, I really had to be like kind of more agile, you know what I mean? Musically, like
Yeah.
I had to be able to just be like, oh, Phil Lesh is telling me to play a different chord in a song that I've worked really hard on. I
Sure.
have to just, yeah, I have to just change, you know, just change my mind about where my hand is going to go right there. It's, you
Yeah.
know, and I think at one of the tunes he really laid into, I can't even remember the tune, it was like Brown Eyed Women or something like that. But we crushed it. And after the song, he like full blown leaned in and fist bumped me. And I was like,
Nice.
yeah, right,
I
we got
have arrived.
it. You know, it was
Do you
funny.
find, like, from being around him, did you find that, like, because all those cats from the Dead seem like maybe without them knowing it, they seem very musically, um, like, intellectual. Do you find, like, from being around Phil, like, whether or not he's like, "I know my theory," or whatever, do you
No, dude,
get that vibe from him?
Phil knew his like, I think more than anything, like two things stood out to me with like being actually in a room with him and talking songs, Grateful Dead songs with him, was like he doesn't ever come off like egotistical or like I know what I'm talking about, and he was merely making suggestions in a really sweet way.
Mhm.
But he has fucking crazy ears too. Like I mean, he's got crazy in-ear monitors. He literally hears everything. If it's and he plays, I can't. You've heard it a million times. He got the sound. It's Phil Lesh. You know the second you hear him.
Mhm.
But playing with him, he like outlined things you were doing, and it was like a fucking fugue,
Oh,
like this classical jammy thing. And then you think of his tone as being very high endy a lot of
mm,
times, but on stage with him, he had so much like even when he was doing the high notes and like the noodly kind of stuff, there was bass in it. It would blew my mind, dude.
yeah.
He knows what the hell he's doing. Like it's not just you think of the Grateful Dead as some kind of like misfit, you know, psychedelic, brain dead kind of like, you know, born out of drugs. You know what I mean? And it's just not like that, man. Like,
I
I mean, it
know.
is to a certain extent also, but they know what the hell they're doing. They
Yeah.
really know what they're doing, man. It's at least
Yeah.
Phil does.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
only probably in the last couple years that I started to dig back into that catalog. Just
Mm-hmm.
just as a songwriter, just like the appreciation of what those guys created and what
Heavy
they
tunes.
yeah, man. I mean, it's just there's so many people who write it off like you're saying, like, "Oh, smoke some pot, drop some acid, and
Right.
make some boxes and put them away in the crowd for a while." But
Exactly.
but it's so it taught me a lot about guitar. And
Yeah, man.
speaking of that, so when you're saying you were kind of getting into jazz later in high school, so did you
Mm-hmm.
go down the road of like Wes Montgomery and Grant Green, and like
Mm-hmm.
what were you diving into at that point where you were like, okay, I gotta get focused on guitar, and this is the way to get to the next level? Like, what were you doing?
You know, it's really interesting, man. Like my first of all, my grandfather was really like best friends with Buddy Rich.
Mm,
So I grew up like anytime I go to my grandparents' house, there was jazz playing, like always. And it was a lot of like horns. It was a lot of Coltrane and Miles and like the Cannonball and the classics, you know what I
Mm.
mean? And so for some reason, like I dug all the guitar players too, but I was into like horn players. I was into Coltrane. I was into Cannonball. I was into like all these horn players. And it happened like I got sent away to boarding. I shouldn't say sent away. I went to boarding school in 11th and 12th grade. And my English teacher there was also an incredible jazz guitar player. And so
Wow.
right around the time that I was starting to really kind of dig deep, like Wayne Krantz was honestly one of the first guitar players for me, like in high school, like 97, you know, like his early stuff. I was like, this guy's doing on some whole other shit. I want to know what's going on here.
Yeah.
And like, you know, there was like, I dug the classic stuff too. But in terms of like the traditional jazz stuff, I was like into horns. It was weird. And I never transcribed anything kind of stupidly. I didn't really like, I never studied music really. I just kind of was influenced by these things I was hearing. And I would play all these things that sounded like a Coltrane riff to me or like a, you know what I mean? Like it totally influenced my playing in that sense. But my English teacher there was like, he kind of took me aside and was like, "You're really talented, but like I'm going to point you in the right direction here. Like, here's who you need to be listening to." And his biggest thing was Pat Martino. He
Oh,
was
okay.
like, he was a big Pat Martino guy and really played a lot like that. He was an impeccable, you know what I mean? Like these perfect kind of like
Linear lines and
linear lines that you just, it was insane. And that really blew my mind. Um, but yeah, I mean, I dug Wes Montgomery a lot. Like, I
yeah.
think I dig him now more than I did in high school. I think like I dig more traditional old school guitar players now. Yeah, high school it was like I wanted some progressive shit and I wanted it to be raging a little bit and
Right. Like
I
Wayne.
love yeah, yeah,
Have you ever
yeah.
tried to transcribe any of Wayne's stuff? Because it's like, man,
No.
I had a jazz fusion trio that we were playing 2 years ago, and I originally wanted to put it together because I wanted to write like in the vein of Wayne, so like
Hmm.
kind of more edgy, but still be experimental and improvisational, but like write cool heads to tunes and stuff.
Yep.
And we did like War Torn Johnny and Black Swan, like some of the newer
Wow.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's that stuff, man. Like if you don't use it, you lose it quick. Because I picked it up the other day. I was like, I'm gonna try to go through those changes in War Torn Johnny, and I was like, ow, I can't do
Dude,
that right now. It's like it takes a minute to get back into it, but it's
oh
so
man.
fun to play, man. It's so
He's
fun
a
to play.
he's on some whole other level. You know, he's
I mean, who
have
else
you
can you talk about? Like talk about people like Schofield or the
Schofield was a
Trail.
big one for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
like the
So
Trailblazers.
right. Yeah, like for me personally, Sco was a big he was a big one, man. So my kind of time frame's a little weird. My life is a little backwards. I had my first kid really when I was like 18. So I didn't really start playing in bands until I was like in my mid 20s. And I kind of missed out on like those high school and college bands, you know what I mean? Like that whole kind of thing. But I was like always playing and always really like in 1999 I got turned on to Soul Life. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I was living in Vermont and my friend was trying to get me to go see a show. I couldn't make it for whatever reason. He brought me back the Turn It Out CD. Like hadn't even been released yet. It was just like you could only get it at their shows. And I put that on and that was kind of like another moment for me of like this is what I want to do.
Mhm.
That guy and Sco was on that record. And I'd listen to Sco's more like, you know, A Go Go was one of those albums that totally changed the course of my whole thinking and my whole world. And you know, having that type of guitar playing and that like kind of funk vibey stuff, like I was like that and that Soul Live album I was like, I'm hooked on Sko. Like Sko is the best. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Well,
He's the best.
did you grow up on the West Coast? Didn't you grow up on the West Coast?
I lived out there for a decade, but I grew up in Florida. I
Oh,
grew up in
okay.
South Florida.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
because that whole West Coast Boogaloo stuff, that Go Go album was basically
Yeah.
that, and like that was fresh and to me because I had never heard. I mean, my brother was into Mineski Martin Wood,
Mm-hmm.
and so he had that, and he had a Go Go, and I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But are there any other records that? What are you listening to right now? Like, what's like turning you on right now?
Oh, geez, man. I've been listening to, dude, I kind of have this playlist that I just keep on, you know, and there's like 800, 900 songs in there. I just keep, anytime I hear something I like, I add to it. But to be totally honest, is it getting, let me turn some lights on real quick.
Okay,
So we
yeah,
can just see,
there
probably a little better.
there
Oh,
we go. Yeah.
yes. Okay. Anyways, so every morning, I've for some reason been waking up and lighting a stick of incense and putting on this like piano jazz, like Bill Evans,
Yeah.
Art Tatum. Um, who else is on there? Just like beautiful, mostly Bill Evans, some Keith Jarrett, like, and just like ballads though, like beautiful. And it just, to me, it sounds like art. It's just like artful and relaxing, but it also is stimulating. And I've been just like doing that and leaving that playlist on most of the day. When I want to listen to something, like when I'm driving, there's this album that Kamasi Washington just did with this dude Terrace Martin, and Robert Glasper's on it, and it's kind of like a hip hop jazz thing. I don't even know what to call it, and it's just beautiful.
Nice.
And Kamasi plays amazing on there. There's some, I don't know who the guitar player is, but there's some great guitar playing on there. That's kind of been my go-to. And then, to be totally honest, man, I feel like an old man these days.
Me
I
too.
don't really want to listen to a lot of like ripping stuff anymore. You know, I like, shit is too hectic.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm gonna put music on, I want it to like mellow me out or
Yeah.
be a breath of like fresh air instead of like making me feel more, you know,
Yeah.
insane. You know what I
I know.
mean?
It's like, give me something mid-tempo that's kind of funky that you can
Right.
feel it in your balls kind of thing, you know what I mean? It's like,
Exactly, man.
yeah, no, I
Exactly.
hear you.
And then so there's this singer songwriter guy out of Canada named Andy Schauf. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
No.
He's got this one album it's called The Party, and it's a concept album, and it's just literally like every song is like a different character at the party, and it's
Nice.
just beautiful writing, and the production is just gorgeous. And been listening to him a bunch, and then like I'm kind of phasing out of it, but Khruangbin really, like, you know, everybody's on that vibe, but that's kind of changed. That, I think that's kind of like, for me, was one of those bands that I was like, oh yeah, this is so much cooler than listening to, like, for me right now, than listening to like shredding guitar. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's just like, as much as I love that stuff, I'm like, I just want to put something on that's like I can listen to. It can be in the background, but it's fucking grooving its ass off and
Yeah.
is musical, you know?
That band, I feel like my buddy, we did like a Zoom session with like some of my best friends, and I was like, everybody bringing a song that they're like super into right now.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my buddies brought that, and that the first time I'd heard them, but I was like, is this band bringing disco back, like in a good
Oh
way?
yeah,
Like,
exactly. They do have some super disco-y stuff too.
yeah.
I saw them on Jam Cruise, and I have to admit I was a little high, you know, and it was my first time seeing them, and I just remember thinking like, this is the most international band I've ever heard in my life. Like, meaning like diverse, I should say, not like the internet, but I felt like you could drop them in the middle of India and everyone could relate to it. You could drop them anywhere in any country in the world and somebody would have something to relate to there. It was just this very like unifying kind of like the way that guitar player plays is like with all the trilly kind of Indian stuff. Everyone kind of thought,
Microtonal.
microtonal,
Yeah.
it's like based off of like Thai funk music, they were saying. And it's just like such a unique thing that, I don't know, that kind of changed my thing in terms of what I wanted to be listening to, really. Yeah.
Right. It's so funny too because the stuff that you're talking about, it's like not what I hear you play, and I love that about musicians is like people that
Totally.
don't listen to the stuff like that they play. Like when I had Joey on here, he was like, "You'd be surprised, like I don't listen to crap that I write. Like the kind of music that I write, I don't like to listen to. Like I would rather listen to classical music at home. You know
I,
what I mean?"
yeah,
So
I think maybe that's why, is because it's like already in there. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, yeah.
it's just, yeah, I don't know.
It makes sense. I mean, it's although that maybe I need to stop listening to the kind of stuff that I write because it's influencing me too much. You know what I mean? Like listening to the Wood Brothers constantly is probably not good for me all the time. But those guys
Yeah,
get
I don't know. I
so much
don't
mileage.
know.
They get so much mileage out of 1/4 progression that I'm
Yeah,
just like, how do you do that so majestically? You know what I mean?
yeah, they're
Uh,
amazing, man. Yeah,
yeah, dude.
definitely.
Jono Ricks is gonna be on here next Saturday.
You were telling, that's amazing, dude. That's amazing.
I cannot wait to talk to that guy.
Yeah, he's amazing.
I wanted to ask you, so you got about like 15 minutes or left or so, but
Uh-huh.
so from On the Spot Trio, which were you on the West Coast at that time, right? When you were in On the
Yes,
Spot,
exactly. Which still
okay,
exists. It's
right,
just constantly evolving situation.
right, and then you went out to play with Al, right?
Hmm.
Okay, and then from that gig, that led into Kraz's band, right? Basically,
Yes. Yeah,
okay,
there was like a stint with that band, Bo Sasser's Escape Plan, kind of in between Alan and Kraz.
right, okay. So that must have been, and I remember talking to you when I was in, maybe not when I was in Boston when I saw you when you guys were playing, but at some point I remember talking to you about the Kraz gig, and you're like, "This is crazy," because like he's one of my heroes, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
but like in mine too, and like a lot of guitar players. But like, what when you kind of went into that gig and you started like hustling on that gig with him, what did you what did you learn from him like almost immediately? Was there something that was like not in terms of guitar, it could be how to
Oh yeah.
tour and not lose your mind or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Like what is one of the lessons that you feel like you pulled away, even if it was like not directly given to you, but by leading by example kind of thing?
Uh-huh. Oh man, so many, honestly, so many things come to mind. We've remained like, he's like one of my best friends in the world. Like straight up, we talk daily, and I think that was kind of the coolest thing for me. It was like we just got along so well that we just had this thing. We just had a total vibe, and I didn't expect that. I didn't expect him to be so like generous and gracious and like willing to kind of put people together and like not really want a piece of it or something. You know what I'm saying? Like I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people on his level are like still hustling, still trying to like get theirs, and there's an ego thing going on there, and I hate that shit. And so I went into the thing with him like I had known him for years, but we had never spent time together, like let alone sharing a hotel room and in a van and on stage. And because I'd see him for an hour or two a couple times a year, and it would be great, and that was it. But I didn't expect him to be like, I knew there were nights he wasn't making any money, but he was buying everyone dinner, or you know what I mean? And just like how
Mhm.
to treat your band with respect, and like also share in like super fucking cool experiences. Oh, I know this dude who builds pedals. We should go to his spot. Maybe he'll give you something. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
or maybe, meet this guy. You should know this dude. Oh, bro, you don't know this guy? He does this, he does that. And like, you should totally know this guy, instead of keeping it for himself. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like, so that's more like off the stage stuff. On stage, for the first 6 months I was in his band, every backline amp we'd go, some fucking venue or fly somewhere, some festival, and I'd plug into the amp and go, oh shit, oh man, it's a Fender Twin and I can't get my tone. And he would walk up to any fucking amp on the face of the planet, plug right in, before he even played, maybe turn a couple knobs, and within seconds, it was like crushing tone, crushing sound, and technique to back it all up. But that's kind of the thing I got from him, was just like, he doesn't even acknowledge that the amp could be shitty until it's really, really shitty. It's just
Right.
not even a thought for him. He's like, I've done this so much. I've been on so many different stages. I've had to use so many different backline amps. It just doesn't even, you can't get hung up on that stuff. Whereas you and I are such tone guys. It's like, for me, it's like everything. It's like all I got, I feel like, you know what I mean?
Well, that's
So
not
it's like,
true, though. You're a great player, but
thanks, I appreciate that. But it feels like that to me a lot of times. Like, it's so important to me, is having a good tone, you know, especially playing with a dude like Raz. Don't want to look like an asshole, you know what I mean, or
well, if you're
sound like
not,
shit.
yeah, if you're not inspired to play, you're gonna play like ass, and you don't want to
Right,
play like that with Kress.
right,
Like,
exactly,
you want to be pushed and inspired by your sound. I get it, man.
totally. But
Yeah.
I'd walk off stage sometimes and I'd be like real disappointed, and he'd be like, dude, you crushed. Like, what are you talking about? Who fucking cares? Like, he just had this like more mature attitude about it all than I did. He was
Mhm.
far less attached to the way it went. You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's so refreshing.
yeah, and it blew my mind. I was like, oh wow, man, like I don't have to worry as much, is
Mhm.
really what, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
that
that's
was really
that's beautiful.
it.
I mean, you can tell from listening to his podcast too. I mean, obviously, he's like I put him in the same echelon of musicology of people like Questlove and folks like that. That he's just like Kraz seems like he's just like a walking encyclopedia of music. He's been steeped in so much. He's like studied and like soaked in so much that he can adapt to any situation.
Mhm.
Like that's the impression I get from him, at least. Um,
It's true, and he's worked with more people than you'd ever realize.
yep.
Like, even if it's like 20 years, oh yeah, like Nora Jones, dude. Like, he's like, oh yeah, I kind of hooked up the Nora Jones Blue Note deal. I'm like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, just like weird little things like that. Like, how did you have anything to do with that? Oh, well, I knew the guy was told I was on Blue Note, and they asked me out, and I told them that, it's like he just has story after story after story of being kind of like in the right place at the right time, and being part of things that you were like, you would never, him as like Kraz from Soul Live, and he's, does some production, and but he's been a part of like some really crazy shit, man. Like,
Yeah.
I was just talking to him today, and he was like, "Yeah, I flew to Puerto Rico one time to work on some stuff with who was he talking about? Like somebody I would never in a million. It was Talib Kweli,
Okay.
but he, you know what I mean. So I knew that, but just weird little things like that. I'm like, we're in Puerto Rico with Talib Kweli, and like, what? Like, what? You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just so weird.
Yeah. It's
Anyway,
it's so funny to see stuff like when you guys came with Doyle and played in Annapolis. That was such a great show. Um,
that was a good one.
and I love. It's weird because like I don't get a chance to see enough music, like enough bands with two guitar players. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's not
Yeah.
it's not often because often it's not in the budget. For people.
Yeah, I think that's what ended up being the case, eventually for
Yeah.
him. But man, like, he was just also starting to sing. He was like really just starting to like come out. So he felt like, I need to have another guitar player to cover these parts that are on the album, so he could just be BB King, essentially. Sing a line and go, you know what I mean? And I'm actually playing the song,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so like, um I think it was really important to him to have that safety net a little bit until he felt more confident in his singing and could like play and sing a bunch more. And he's now like, I mean, dude, he's gotten so much. Dude, he's working on an album right now that you're gonna bug out when you hear it.
Okay.
It's like, I don't know exactly when it's coming out, but it's the best music I've heard from him, and he's singing really really great, and it's like it's amazing. It's really
That's
amazing.
awesome. I cannot
Yeah,
wait.
man.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing I wanted to ask you before we get into our lightning round get down question, bonanza is, so when you talk about, we're both tone junkies and everything with how we craft our sound. Is there, first of all, what are you playing through now amp wise? Because for a while there, you've kind of bounced around a little bit.
Bounced around. Yeah. I have my favorite amp I've ever had in my life right now, and my friend Wayne has this company, Headstrong Amps, and they're just really great Fender circuitry. Like, he's not trying to reinvent the wheel. He's just makes top-notch vintage Fender amps, you know what I mean? And models everything after like the original, circuits. And so this is his model. He calls it the Little King S. It's a Headstrong Little King S, which is the Princeton circuit, but Princeton's 15 watts and has a 10-inch speaker, and this is a 25, 27 watt amp with a 12. And I had him put it in like a larger cab size too, and I've literally have never been happier with an amp. I realized, like, after playing all these custom amps, and they're all fucking amazing. They're all really, really great. But I'm like a Fender guy. I'd like,
apparently,
yeah. Like, I just had to like admit it eventually. You know what I mean? It's like I had to do like a full circle. Like, okay, this is just where I ended up, and I play the sound I'm hearing in my head comes out the best through this amp and this guitar. And so yeah, it's a Headstrong Little King S is what it's called. But I think he's calling it, I think I have the only one that's in this larger cab. So he called it a Little King Jumbo instead of a Little King S or something like that. Nice. But it's the same circuit,
So if you had to roll to a gig right now and you just had to grab one guitar, an amp, and a pedal, would it be the Little King, the Strat, and then the King of Tone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
You can't go wrong.
Exactly. I had this pedal for a while from this dude, the Noise Kick guy, Matt.
Yeah, Baltimore.
Baltimore. Yeah, he makes some unbelievable pedals, and he built me this thing for a little while. Dude, sad story. I left it at a venue. I sat in with Marcus King Band in Philly, and I left it there and just haven't been back to guy. Literally, I don't think I've even played a gig since. But it's still sitting there for me. But it's a overdrive, a boost, and beautiful reverb, just in case the amp doesn't have reverb that I'm sitting in with a band for. And that would be kind of the pedal I would grab, really, if I still had it. I love the King of Tone, but this thing just has like this perfect little easy, it's called the sit-in pedal is what he called it.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was over his place. I don't know if that was like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe more. Because he was at a gig one night and I was talking to him, and he was like, "Is there anything that you'd want that you'd want made that you can't get?" And I was like, "Well, this is hard to do probably, but like the right side of the Moger Foger ring modulator, just that." He was like, It's like, you know how complicated that circuit is, and I was like, and he tried. He's like, I'll try to mess with it and see what I can do, and it sounded great. It just wasn't what I needed.
Right.
But
he's a cool dude. He's such a sweetheart.
He is. He seems like a great guy from the little time I spent with him. But all right, well, let's do this lightning round, man. I want to.
All right.
So what we do here on the show is basically 10 questions. There are no right or wrong answers. It's all silly. We use a metronome to create a little bit of suspense.
Oh God.
But you will survive, my friend. The first question is always the same. Lennon or McCartney?
It's a tough one. Lennon for just the balls and brashness. I like Paul's tunes better though.
Yep. Okay. Netflix or Amazon Prime Video?
I go to Netflix. I'm a Netflix guy.
I'm gonna know the answer to this, but single coils or humbuckers?
Yeah, I'm a single coil guy for sure.
Yeah. If someone was gonna give you money or free time? What would you choose? Now that's
At
weird
this
in a world
point,
of COVID.
I was just gonna say, at this point, I have more free time than I know what to do with, and lacking a little bit of money. So I would definitely go for the money at this point.
Fair enough. All right, Bert or Ernie?
Shit, Bert's the shorter guy, right?
Yeah, no, Bert's tall.
Bert's the tall guy. Yes, yes. Sorry, I knew I. Yeah, I go Bert.
Okay.
Bert seems to have a little bit more of like a carefree vibe. I think.
I can see you vibing with him. All right, fall or spring?
Oh man, I love the fall. I love it. It does something to me. I don't know what, but I love it.
Fall in Philly's got to be pretty too, man. And someone like the countryside and stuff in Philly is so pretty.
Yeah, man, it's gorgeous right now.
If you had to go to a gig, do you want a combo amp or do you want a head in a cabinet?
Combo.
Okay. Glasses or contacts?
I always wanted contacts, but they never worked. So I have to do glasses. I have no choice in that.
All right. Heath Ledger's Joker or Jack Nicholson's Joker?
Oh, Jack. I mean, Heath is amazing, but Jack is like, that's my childhood. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. All right, last one. This may be easy. The last one's always super easy or really complicated for people, but Jerry or Trey?
Oh, Jerry. I mean, that is a tough one. It is a tough one. I do like a lot of aspects of Trey's playing a lot better than Jerry's playing. That's a tough one. But I've been more of a Deadhead than I have a Fish fan. You know what I mean?
All right, sweet. You made it through, my friend. You made it through.
Thanks, bro.
The Fish thing. So for you, did you like? Because for me, like I was looking for something a little bit harder edged, and I think when I heard Fish coming from like listening to the Dead and my brother, because my brother had at the time had Junta on tape, and he might have had like Lawn Boy or something. I can't remember, but I got exposed to it. And I was like, oh, this is a little bit harder edged. I like this more.
Yeah,
was that your experience?
100%. Yeah, I've seen a ton of Fish shows. Like, you know, when I was young, growing up in Florida, not a lot of bands came through Florida, you know? Like, I was lucky enough to see the Grateful Dead 3 nights in a row in 1994, and then two nights in 95. But when Jerry died in 95, I was 15 years old, and my first Fish show was in 94, and they toured Florida. So I could literally I could see 10 shows, you know what I mean? And so I did, you know, I did, you know, I would skip school to go see Fish shows, and I was way into it then, you know, and then I kind of fell out. And obviously I play with a lot of the people from Trey's band, and I think Trey is unbelievable. I think he's unbelievable, man.
Yeah,
for sure.
I would really like to go see them again. The last time I saw them was they played at Fenway when I was still living in Boston, and it was their first show back after the hiatus, and it was a train wreck.
You know what, dude? I'll tell you some just real quick. I was at Coventry, which was their last like hurrah before they broke up. You know what I mean? And it was bad. Trey was crying on stage. The buses just left. You saw them all walk onto the buses and leave. Like, it was just an open field. You could see the whole thing. You know what I mean? It was like the last song. The buses were pulling up, and Trey got on his bus. The rest of it was fucking awkward and weird, and people in the audience were crying, and it was terrible. So then I recently just saw them at MSG this last year, and I'd never been to MSG before, and I hadn't seen them since Coventry, and I was blown away. I was blown away.
I heard they're killing it more than ever.
They're killing it, man. Their ears are amazing too. What blew me away specifically, and I didn't necessarily notice this when I was a kid, but you know, if they're playing in Dorian or some sort of mode in a jam, somebody would just change one note. You know what I mean? Like, just literally one note, and everybody would shift what they were doing to be in that new vibe, and it would just happen so beautifully. It was like all they had to do was imply it, and everyone was on board.
Yeah.
And it was just this real amazing thing to see. I haven't really heard a band do that well ever. You know, it was cool.
There's a reason they're sitting on a throne they're sitting on, because And I say thrown very affectionately because they've earned it. Those guys have worked really hard throughout their whole career, but like, there's not been many other guitarists in my life that have taught me more about my instrument than listening to Trey, you know?
Really? Yeah, right on, dude.
I mean, it's like, there's a bunch of people, but like
Of course.
understanding patience.
Yeah, right.
And like, because sometimes when you get on stage and you like, you really want to get after it, like when someone passes the baton to you, but like,
Yeah.
you don't need to rush it. Like there's endless time. Like,
Right.
as far as you're concerned in that moment in a song, there's no time. Time doesn't exist. And it's okay if the song takes 3 minutes to get to where it's going to be cool. I would rather take my time to get to that point to make it cool than to try to rush some lick to make some dude in the front row go, "Oh, what pedal was that?" You know what I mean?
I fully know what you mean.
It's just that thing, dude. Like, I remember seeing Bittersweet Motel at that documentary and just being like, okay, now I understand the kind of work it takes to do this type of music. So
yeah, man.
Yeah,
they're
crazy.
really deeply committed.
Yeah. Well, buddy, thank you so much for your time, man.
Dude, thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Your buddy Alan Evans is on this Saturday if you want to come check it out and heckle him while he's on here.
Definitely.
But I really appreciate you, buddy. I'll let you get back to your family. And your dog, how's your dog? You got a new dog, didn't you?
Yeah, I've been snapping at her. She's like chewing up my rug over here while I'm talking.
Oh God, dude.
I know she's amazing though. She's so fun. She's such a sweetheart. Yeah, we have similar breeds. Our dogs are very similar mentality for sure.
Yeah, if you don't give them some attention.
Exactly.
Your rug will be gone, bro.
You're gonna pay for it for sure.
All right,
dude. Folks, thanks again for having me, man. For real.
Of course, man. Anytime. Maybe after all this crap is over in a year, we'll see where you are at then, and we'll do this again.
Beautiful.
Peace, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. We'll see you soon.
All right.